Hello friends, I am Chevee. Welcome to my shed. How are you today? How's life in your world and how's things where you are? Hope it's fantastic. Everything here is great, and I have the Kindle with me today because we're talking about a book. A book that I would have never picked up off the shelf or read had one of you not told me about it. And so, thank you for that. The book was called Greenglass House by I should have probably done my research. Kate Medford, I think was her name. I don't remember. You'll have to look it up. But this book was suggested by Kate Milford. This book was suggested by Jim Jones, who comments pretty regularly over the years. And he said it was something his whole family loved. His daughters read the first book 10 or 20 times. And so I was like, cool, I'll give it a shot. And that was like on Monday or something, and I'm done with the book. And I say it's not the kind of book I would have picked up because I think this book is sold as a middle grade book. Like that's who its intended audience is, as middle grade readers. And while the story of the book is very middle grade familiar, meaning that young teens, it's a familiar read, a familiar adventure story for a young person. I think the writing is maybe a little heavier than middle grade, and it felt like an adult book with a middle grade theme. And I really appreciate that because as a 40-something teenager, I was able to be carried away into the world of this book and this character and identify with the character. So the book is a fictional book about a young boy whose house is who's on winter break from school, and his house is overrun by unexpected guests. His house is an inn of sorts for smugglers in a city. Like naval smugglers. They take rooms in his house. And suddenly, even though the winter is on and there is no smuggling because the river is frozen, his house gets overwhelmed with people, and it turns out there's a lot of mystery. All of these people were there for various reasons, and he's trying to figure out why they're there. Why did these people show up? And it turns out the house is a mystery, and there's a whole bunch going on, and he plays a game through this adventure called Odd Trails, I think, or maybe it's Odd Trials. I think it's Odd Trails. He plays a game called Odd Trails, which is an RPG that's, as it's described, his dad played it or whatever, and that's his way of working through the difficulties of dealing with all these people in his house for Christmas break. So he plays a character that he made for this Odd Trails campaign, and he's pretending like he's on this this quest for his Christmas vacation. As it turns out, he really was on a quest, and he really did solve a mystery, and he solved a bunch of them. And he was not disappointed at the house being overwhelmed by guests, and he was thoughtful, and like most stories, it turns out what the character thought they, wanted was not really what they needed, and what they got was something completely different. And as a reader of that adventure, I was very moved by it. I identified a lot with the kid in this book, not because I'm adopted or I'm Chinese, which he is, but because I did a lot of playing by myself to get myself through an adventure. In the book, he has a companion named Medi, and she helps him, solve all kinds of, they together, made up this adventuring party. But it's a very kind of, I guess, wholesome book. And it definitely has that, the grown-ups, I don't want to say they talk down to him because they don't really. They treat him very much like a advanced child. I think he's 11 or 12 in the book. They treat him very advanced, and they don't really coddle him. But there is definitely the you need to leave the room so the adults can talk kind of stuff. The kind of stuff that you would expect in a middle grade book of like the grown-ups don't get it, and he does. And but it was a really fun adventure, and it was not overly fantastical. There wasn't witches showing up or whatever. But it had a very interesting world. The world of this house. I mean, the whole book takes place in this house or on the grounds of this house that is oddly situated at the mouth of this river, and they have a rail car that goes down to the ferry docks and brings people up, and so it's got a whole lot of really mysterious things going on that make the setting interesting. And then on top of that, the author was really able to weave this narrative of this kid being engrossed by these guests and figuring out what they're here for, and maybe tying things together that might not have been or maybe are. It was fun. It was a very fun book, so I'm very glad that I read it. There are, I guess, like 5 books in the series. I did read, like most books, at the end of this, there is the first chapter of the next book. I read that, and I'm not immediately like, I got to go read that second book. I still have quite a bit of back stuff that I need to read, but I'm really glad that I read this one because it's just not something I would have picked up. I'm much more into fantasy than what this book offers, and there is some fantastical elements, but it's not huge. But it was kind of almost like, it almost felt like, if the Goonies took place in a living room, here it is, right? That's what it felt like. And it was really fun to go on that adventure with Milo and his family and the guests of the Greenglass house. So, thank you, Jim, for suggesting it. I'm glad I got to read it. I don't know what I'm going to read next. I'm thinking I'm going for Kings of the Wild. I've had it on here forever, and I guess it's, it was basically written as a D&D campaign, kind of, like, anyway, we'll find out. But, yeah, if you have any other suggestions for kind of cozy books, I think that's what I'm wanting to read right now. Stuff that doesn't have huge, dramatic, world-changing stakes. Just simple stories. Let me know in the comments. Thank you for being here as always. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, being amazing friends and wonderful people. I really appreciate you. And I'll see you again tomorrow. Today's word you should know to sound smart is necessitate. It's a verb meaning to make necessary, to obligate. Each coming together of man and wife, even if they have been mated for many years, should be a fresh adventure. Each winning should necessitate a fresh wooing. Marie Carmichael Stopes, British scientist and birth control pioneer. Necessitate. 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 This pronunciation key wants me to say necessitate, and I've never said it that way. I've always said necessitate. I don't know if you heard a difference there. I don't know if I heard a difference there.